our response to human needs have been decisively influenced by our views of human nature. Now, there's a book titled Theories of Human Nature. If you read this book, you're going to find out that even the kind of institutions you have in a society depends on the assumptions you make about human nature. I remember when I teach social theory, we cover a little bit of that. And I always tell the students, I think there's a verse in Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah in the Bible, that says, the heart of man is desperately wicked. Okay? Now, if you start with this assumption that the heart of man is desperately wicked, you can see the direction it is going to lead you. How, if you live in a community, like I am visiting a community and they tell me that, well, welcome to this community where everybody is desperately wicked. Of course. That means without some kind of good institutions or something like that, control, anything can happen, okay? And then you have people like John Locke, who says that human beings have been created with a brain that, or a mind that is tabula rasa. Tabula rasa simply means your mind is a slate, or your brain is just a slate, or something like that. So in other words, whether you become a good person or a bad person, it depends on what happens in your environment. So what we're saying here is just that how we think about helping or addressing human needs is significantly influenced by our human nature. If we say, as we much earlier, we said, like, some people are idiots, some people are just irresponsible, things like that, then it's going to affect the way we relate to them. But if we think the people are responsible, but they just got into something by accident, that's something totally different. So bear this in mind, that how you think about somebody affects what you do to him and how you do to her or him, okay? This is something very, very important. Okay, then 9, perception of the needy shapes social welfare programs' content. And the best example I can give here is the difference between social security and this kind of support that you receive where you have to qualify or something like that, because it's not just kind of like automatic. But if you, I know somebody, for instance, who had some issues, and when he went to Social Security, actually, the amount he was getting from Social Security was even more than his official retirement amount, and without much controversy or anything like that. Okay, but if he didn't have anything to qualify for that, that would be something totally different. So perception of the needy shapes the content of social welfare policy. And sometimes this perception may be unconscious. Sometimes they call it unconscious bias. Okay, so we have to think about that when you look at other people, how do you think about them? Because that would influence the way you treat them. And then 10, throughout American history, there has been an ambivalence towards the poor. Ambivalence towards the poor is that there's a part of America that really wants to help the poor, but there's a part of America that feels the poor are irresponsible people, and they will have to suffer their consequences. As we shall see, they created almshouses. Almshouses are places that people who are either unemployed or poor are brought together to stay. They are disciplined. Their life is regimented, regulated, and things like that. Okay, so we have an ambivalence there. We want to help, and let me just use myself as an example. There's somebody I meet in an area where I go for shopping, and he asks one thing or the other, and I try to give him something. But imagine you give him something today, but tomorrow when you come, or 2 days later, you're going to find him there. Okay? You come next week, you're going to find him there. Now, research indicates that human beings are more likely to contribute or to help when they know that when they contribute, the problem is going to end. It's not going to repeat itself. Okay? There was a good study that was conducted, or something happened, and somebody wrote about this that I read. It was somewhere around Hawaii. A ship got wrecked there, and they were able to rescue all the people, but then they ended up forgetting that there was a dog beneath the ship. So when the news circulated, some people started writing $500 check so that dog could be rescued. Okay? But then meanwhile, in their neighborhood, there are people who are poor, but they wouldn't write such a check to help them. Why? Now, the author argues that the difference is that there's a high degree of satisfaction that you get if you donate $500, and then the next day you hear that the dog has been rescued and the problem has come to an end. Okay? But if you give $500 to somebody today, but then tomorrow or next tomorrow, they are in the same problem again, there's a way you don't feel highly as much satisfied or something like that. Okay? So this is something that I think we should pay attention to, about the ambivalence towards the poor. Some people really want to help the poor, but sometimes they run into some of these psychological problems. And then 11, the application of the poor laws in a manner that was discriminatory to blacks was aimed at helping African Americans achieve the independent status of other American citizens. So what this means is that in America, one of the things we emphasize in terms of the culture of this country is being independent. Now, whatever your opinion is about this is something that is well established. In America, we encourage people to be independent. When children are born, we expect that at a certain age, even if there's space in their father's house or their parents' house, they would move to a place of their own to show that they are capable of taking care of themselves. They are independent. Okay, so independence is something very important. So there's this argument that when you continue to give people help, like if somebody can be on social welfare for 20 years, 15 years, then literally maybe you are crushing their sense of aspiration. You will just say, well, I can just stay here, do nothing, at least I'll get something to eat or something. There's no aspiration. So some people therefore argue that when black people were discriminated, the idea for some people was that this will make the black people become more disciplined when they realize that, well, if they do not do this, they do not do that, there's nobody to take care of them, so they have to be responsible to themselves. So this idea of independence directly and indirectly shaped public policy discussions regarding social welfare. Now, the next point is the Social Security Act created a path dependence. So let me talk about path dependence. Path dependence simply means that there are certain decisions that you make in the past that after some time, they close other options for you totally. You can only move in a certain direction. Okay? So for instance, I have made a decision to migrate to the United States, to become a citizen of the United States. And at this point in my life, it has closed many other options in my life because this is the option I have chosen. Or I have chosen to be in academia. So at this point in my life, it's too late for me maybe to go and just say, well, I will change my profession and start something again, okay? So path dependence simply means decision that you make in the past can create a path in the future that is dependent on the past decision. So what are we saying here? What I'm trying to get at here with the issue of path dependence is that if you look at the history of U.S. welfare policies, given that things that were not integral to Social Security at the beginning remain excluded, and to this day, and a good example of that is healthcare. If, for instance, at the time when Social Security was conceptualized in the United States, healthcare was an integral part of that, all that we need to be doing now is probably just to improve public healthcare or something like that, okay? But because at this very critical moment when we sat down and tried to come up with a policy as important as Social Security, because my belief from my readings is that, and the literature proves is that, when you talk of Social Security, there may be differences here and there, but there's some kind of overwhelming consensus about the importance of Social Security across political divide, okay? So, but if at the very moment when Social Security was being debated, healthcare was included there, then it wouldn't be difficult for us to improve more on public healthcare, whatever. But because at that very moment when that decision was made, healthcare was excluded, kind of universal healthcare was included. I know you have Medicare if you have Social Security, but remember that you can only have that depending on whether you have the credits. If you don't have the credits, I'm really sorry, it's going to be something different. I think you have to go for Medicaid or something like that. Yeah, but so the point here is that there are certain decisions that were made about public policies or social policies at a certain point, but healthcare was not discussed, and it remains out. And I don't think in my lifetime we're going to reach a point where we're going to have universal healthcare in the United States, because it doesn't seem like we have a climate that will support that, political climate. Okay. And then the last issue here is social movements play an important role in shaping social welfare debates and policies in American history. So I touched on this point much earlier, which is to say that every policy you see in this country, I'm sorry to say, but many of the policies you see in this country did not happen just because people just decided to go and they fast for 3 days, and then on Sunday they went and then they said all black people should have the right to vote, or that all women should have the right to vote, all those kind of things. If you study the history of this country, you will find out that women did not get the right to vote without struggle. When the ratification of the amendment was taking place, they had to move from state to state trying to get, I think Tennessee was the last state that ratified, okay? The civil rights, it wouldn't have come at the time it came if there was no struggle, okay? Workers' rights. Today we don't have many unions, but when you check the history of this country, you will find out that unions played a very, very important role in shaping some of the public policies in this country, okay? So the point here is just that social movements have played a very important role. But there are religious movement. You remember some of the religious movement also contributed to the abolition of slavery, okay? But what I want to draw your attention, and this is in the second sentence, social movements are genus-based in nature, as some promote welfare reform while others oppose it. So what does this mean? When we say social movement, do not assume that all of them are oriented towards supporting social welfare policies or something like that. Just as we have social movements that are willing to promote social welfare for everyone, okay, there are also movements that are opposed to that, okay? And sometimes in a liberal democracy, that's the way it is. It is more or less like a balance of power. What do I mean by a balance of power? Sometimes our politicians, there are very few politicians who are courageous. The primary goal of every politician is to maintain his or her power. There are few politicians who will sacrifice, who will take the risk to do the right thing or to say the right thing, even though they know that it is unpopular. Because this whole idea that, especially sometimes in some religious communities, that, oh, we want the truth is this. Look, truth may be there, but don't tell me that everybody is willing to embrace the truth when you say it. There are people who listen to you when you say the truth. They know that what you said is the truth, but they just do not like it. And they will make you pay the price for that because you did not say what they really want to really say. So very few politicians have the courage to do the right thing. So most of the time, if there are very well-organized movements that are against public welfare or social welfare, the politicians will just think about it, and if they think not supporting these people will make them lose their vote or make them lose their position, they will just accept it. I remember a friend of mine when I was in graduate school, he's an African-American, and he wrote his doctoral dissertation about school desegregation in Buffalo, New York. Okay, and one of the interesting things I remember he told me was that during the time, the mayor of the city came across as somebody who was racist, okay? Because he was really championing these people who opposed school desegregation. But when he went and interviewed him, the man just did not agree with school segregation, okay? He did not agree at all. He went in depth to just show that, no, it was not the right thing. But then the question is, why did he decide to side with those people who are promoting the social movement that was promoting school segregation to continue? Well, he wanted to win elections. So we have to be very, very careful here that there are people who know the truth, but if their primary goal is trying to win an election, and this is not just a problem in the United States, it's a problem even among sometimes some religious leaders. They are just concerned about keeping their position. And because they are willing to keep their position, they are never willing to confront the truth. So I hope this gives you an overview of what the textbook you're going to read is going to be covering. Thank you very much.